All right. So I think we are chapter 28, verse 4.
Yeah.
Am I right?
That's what I have.
Beautiful. Oh, the clothing, the vestments. Good, good, good.
28:4. 28.
What?
You said 28:4?
Yes.
Yes.
Wow. Rashi and Ramban get off on a big disagreement here. This is interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
My book goes to Kings.
No, that's the Haftorah 505.
Oh, okay. Got it.
All right. Tina, you want to read for us?
Sure. These are the vestments that they shall make: a breastplate, an ephod, a robe, a tunic of a box-like knit, a turban, and a sash. They shall make vestments of sanctity for Aaron your brother and his sons to minister to me.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3,
This
4,
is like a breastplate.
5, 6. Because I have the Kohen Gadol. Wait a minute, where was it? I had something somewhere where the priests wore 4, but the Kohen Gadol wore 8.
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
The priests wore what?
4. I can't find it now. Hold on. All right, well, anyhow, while performing the temple service, a Kohen had to wear the vestments. Otherwise, any service he performed was invalid.
Mm-hmm.
As gleaned from many of the commentators, the special nature of the vestment served to set the Kohanim apart from others when they performed the service. The nation had to recognize that Aaron and his sons were on a high spiritual level, and this is why only they could perform the service. The special and unusual nature of the vestments helped make this apparent to all onlookers, as well as to the Kohanim themselves, for the way that a person approaches a task influences how he will perform it. In addition, many commentators speak at length of the spiritual symbolism of the individual vestments of both the Kohen Gadol or high priest and the ordinary Kohanim.
The part before that, Dina, that how you approach, what was that? How you approach a task influences how you perform the task?
Yeah.
So that's the argument for getting dressed up to go to shul.
Right, I was thinking
Yeah.
that because our message now to our congregants is we don't care how you dress, just come to shul.
Right. And the counter to that is that dressing up, like everything else, dressing up is not for God or for Shabbat or for anyone else in the shul. It's for you. That when you dress a certain way, that changes the way you approach what you're about to do.
It changes the way you think about
Yeah.
what you're doing.
You know, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I think it's interesting in this country when I and a couple of friends not related to me but moved down at the same time I did. This was the late 70s, early 80s. People who were from up north were very distraught that when they went out with others, they were living down here, they did not get dressed up. The feeling of quote unquote dress up is not the same all over the country all the time. So, I mean, in those days, I don't know if it was any more unisex or I don't know what the word is. You know, it was more the same for everybody than it is in this country when people go out or don't. Here, they're much more casual.
But dress code has changed over the years significantly. When I was growing up, so I was a young girl, probably 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. If we were going in town, to Jordan's or Feline's, and especially when we met an aunt, I wore stockings. I wore nylons.
You got dressed up, yeah.
With seams, and I had gloves. I mean, that was just what you did. When you went to the opera, you dressed for the opera. Long gowns the first night, but dresses and dressed up clothes now. Now you have people going even to the Met in New York first night in jeans.
That's right. That's absolutely.
And I don't even mean jeans. I actually mean dungarees.
Right.
You know, the ones with rips and the holes in the wash.
The casual was more down here first, and then it sort of traveled up north. Because when I first moved down, I remember going out with other men and women, and my friend used to comment, "Why don't they put on a shirt with a tie? What are they doing with a sweatshirt?" You know, it was much more casual.
Dina, what was the thinking behind that choice of dress when you would go meet your, like, what? I understand that it was just something you did, but was there a thought process behind? Who is it for?
People dressed to go in town.
That's exactly right.
You wore stockings and I remember gloves. I remember white gloves. I don't know why. You can't shop in the gloves. You have to take them off when you start shopping. But that was what you did.
And I mean, your mother did it, you did it.
I started college with a dress code in the School of Education. You were not allowed to wear slacks or pants unless the temperature was, I think, below 15 degrees. And then that was in the days when pantsuits, you know, tunics and matching pants were fashionable. The School of Ed did not allow it.
Where was this? What city? Where?
Boston University.
In Boston. Yeah, we were in New Jersey, and I was in an all-girls school. We didn't wear pants that much. We wore mostly skirts and sweaters.
But it was a reflection of the time, Lenore.
Yeah, I agree. But we didn't think of it as that at that time, though.
Hi, Si.
Hi, Si. I mean, it's the way things were.
We can look back and see all that, but we couldn't, at least my bunch.
Right. I mean, you know, in hindsight, you see but you only recognize it because it's different now. If it were the same now, we wouldn't even be having the conversation.
So I guess the question for today is, I don't mean today as in Tuesday, I mean for modernity, is given that isn't how the world works anymore, should it be that there are certain times or places where we, I don't know if insist upon that is the right word, but where we encourage it? You know, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, finish up.
I was just going to say, is it appropriate for us to say that when you go to a synagogue, and let's just use synagogue because, I mean, we could debate about operas and stuff like that, but is it appropriate when you go to synagogue to not dress up? And before we go on, I just want to, because to me, the answer to that question has to be born out of why did Aaron and his sons wear these things, right? You told us.
The comment I read was that they were on a high spiritual level.
Right.
And the special and unusual nature helped make this apparent.
Right. So it was, for them, it was about setting themselves apart to a certain extent. And I wonder if that's, and you know, we Jews,
it wasn't, part of it was that, but it was also to remind them.
Yes. To remind them and the other people.
They were performing sacred duty.
Which I think you could make a very strong argument that today, all three of those, to set them apart, to remind them and to remind others that they're doing a sacred duty, all three of those can still apply today as far as the synagogue goes. Like, I could make a very strong argument for when you go to synagogue, you should dress up because no one else on Saturday is getting all dressed up, and we want to set ourselves apart. And as a reminder to you and the other people there that what you're doing is sacred and different and holy. Lenore, okay. Sorry.
It's not devil's advocate.
Wait, let Lenore jump in real quick.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have one thing to go crosswise with, and that is, I would say I was about 11 or 12, And in Sunday school, just before confirmation, we didn't have bat mitzvah at the time. And the teacher got to talking about what they do in Israel. The teacher had come back from a trip to Israel and said, you know, they don't really care what you wear. They can come in any kind of jeans or sloppy tops. As long as they're not going to pray, they're in temple. Doesn't matter what the kids come in with or the adults, really. And that stuck in my head for a very long time, that it was different in Israel if they didn't care. And, you know, sometimes you do see younger people walking around with bare feet. I hate that because first of all, I don't think it's medically and physically a good idea to walk in bare feet where you don't know what's on the floor, and kids can very easily cut themselves. However, the idea that it was done like that in Israel got a lot of people thinking, well, you know, it's okay with them. Why is it okay with us? Right. As far as coming, I don't think your point would go over so well. And I don't know about North. In a mixed temple of, you know, fairly observant and fairly non-observant people, or not very observant, the difference becomes you don't get dressed up on Friday night, but you do on Saturday morning, more or less.
Yeah.
And I just don't think at this point that down here in Florida you could change that. Not now.
Dina, what were you going to say?
Well, to your comment about the reasons why the three things, nobody else does it. What were your three comments? To set us apart. No, to set us apart.
To remind us and to remind others.
Us and to remind others. Okay. So playing devil's advocate, that's for the clergy.
Okay.
Because that's for the Kohanim.
Yeah. Yeah, you could make that argument. Yes.
So now, having said that, I cannot personally ever see myself wearing pants or slacks to Shabbat services.
Right.
But that's me personally.
But in our temple, they encourage you to come anyway.
Right. That's how we started this conversation, Si.
But that's new in your temple. That's relatively, I mean, relative to the age of the temple, that's relatively new. When I left, that was still a struggle to welcome people that, you know, that maybe weren't. We would always welcome them, but there was a question as to whether we should actively encourage people to come as they are.
Right.
Now, my daughter belongs to a temple in New Jersey, and I question her from time to time, and she'll say to me, Mom, why are you still asking me? We dress the same as you do. And I asked her about you wearing, you know, pants, and she said, no, people, as long as they're neat and clean, it's fine. They just want them to come to temple. So I said,
right.
The temple was the important point.
My problem with what you said, Dina, about the rabbi thing, and I mean, you know me well enough to know that this is the thing that sticks, and this is stuck in my side forever, is the glorification of the clergy. You know, to liken the clergy to the high priests, to me is a real problem in the Jewish community, and I understand. I see the comparison. I see how you could draw that parallel, but to me, it's lahavdil. It's, you know, it's the exact opposite. Is that the rabbi isn't a high priest. We don't have high priests anymore. The rabbi is no more holy, or the cantor is no more holy than anyone else. And so,
and yet
you're right.
And yet, congregants hold
yes.
to a higher standard. And you know as well as I do, many congregants just assume that if the clergy is doing what they should be doing, then that takes care of everybody else.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, we've had this conversation before as well.
Of course. And the flip side of that is, this is not gonna come out correctly, but the flip side of that is, okay, if I as a rabbi get dressed up on Shabbat because I am the rabbi and people perceive me in that way, then what is the message that that's sending? It could be sending the message that it's a special day and you should be dressed up nicely on that day. It's a holy day and you should set yourself apart. it could also send the message that, like you said, Dina, that the only proper way to do this, because I am the symbolic exemplar, as rabbis have been called, the only proper way to do this is when you are formally dressed.
Right,
And
which
so,
means if you're not going to dress, don't come.
right.
Okay.
And the third piece is, wait, do I have a third piece? Well, not just if you're not dressed, don't come, but
That's kind of harsh if you don't
No,
dress.
no,
But
no,
it-
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that that's the message that it could send.
no, it's not just the message that it could send. I mean, Lenore, this has happened at your temple as well. I mean, I know people who were literally turned away at the door because of what they were wearing. I mean, we've
Really?
absolutely, yeah. Synagogues all over the country have sent that message. If you're not dressed appropriately, don't come in.
Well,
I guess what I was trying to suggest is that
amazing.
part of what I want to send, part of the message that I want to send is that it isn't just a rabbi or a priest or someone dressed up in a suit. You know what? The message I want to send is Lo b'shamayim hi. That's the message, right? When the people say, oh, there are too many mitzvot, we can't do them all. And the answer is, what are you talking about? Lo b'shamayim hi. It's not up in the heavens. It's not too far away. It's not across the sea that you need someone to go get it. It's right here, befinu. It's right on our lips. That's the message that I want. That's what I want to model to my communities, is that it isn't this heightened, over cumbersome, complicated thing to daven, to do Shabbos, to be Jewish, whatever it is. It's easy, it's simple, and you can do it. And that the more that I do to separate myself from the community, I feel the more that does to undercut that message of you guys can. It's easy, you can do it. You know, this is where Chabad has really, they are masterful at this. Chabad is masterful at, of course you can do it. You know, they teach everyone how to make their own shofar. They teach everyone how to bake their own challah. I mean, if you live the Chabad lifestyle, you'd never have to go to a Jewish store ever to get anything, because befinu, it's right here in your lips. You can do it all. So that's what I struggle with, is that's the message I want to send. Lo b'shamayim hi. It's not in the heavens, and yet so often I feel that my job requires me to act like I'm in the heavens, so to speak.
I think you're mostly right. When I think of other people, I think they would look at Rabbi askance if he, from the beginning of his time there, walked in jeans and prayed in jeans and was up at the bima, and he would be criticized very heavily
Right.
versus one of the congregants.
You know, I had a meeting yesterday with a rabbi of a very big shul down here, and I walked into his office and he was in jeans, and I was surprised. It didn't bother me at all, but I was surprised.
Okay, now
Why were you surprised?
take that comment and recognize that you noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. No,
Why were you surprised?
because he's a big rabbi of a big shul, and I never would have expected him to be in jeans. Now, I noticed it, and my reaction was pleasant surprise, but I'm sure that lots of other people would notice it and be uncomfortable. But here's the other thing I want to throw in, and I wonder how much of our discomfort with attire at synagogue, how much of that comes out of Jewish tradition and how much of that comes out of our own experience here in America. So, you know, for example, Dina, I wonder how much of you not being able to wear pants on shul, how much of that comes from you remembering the white gloves that you wore, and how much of that comes from Jewish tradition? Because I think that we very often mix up tradition with formality. Formality being the thing that we have perhaps grown up with, which doesn't make it any less important, by the way, but it's just the distinction is, I think, important.
You haven't touched on the, I'm sorry, that was addressed to Dina.
It's okay. I'm trying to think through that answer because I'm not sure that they're distinguishable.
Really? Oh my
It's how
goodness.
I grew up. It was
Right,
how
but
I grew up.
but as a student of Torah, you can certainly acknowledge that some of the things that you do, you don't do because it's halacha. You do it because it's the way how you grew
Oh
up.
no,
And it-
no, it's not that it's halakha, but you said, is it tradition or is it the way I was brought up?
sorry, I should have been more clear. When I said
If you meant Jewish tradition,
yes, no,
halakha.
that's what I meant. I meant
All right,
Jewish tradition bordering on law. I'm sorry. You're right.
Okay, all right. So no, so it has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with tradition. There's nothing in the Torah about how women should dress because we're not in there.
Well, there's a little bit in there. It's women shouldn't wear men's clothing, which is one of the arguments against
No,
women
men
wearing.
shouldn't. Is it men shouldn't wear women's clothing?
Does it have both? Is it just men? Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just
Why
men.
would they talk about what women were wearing?
Yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe it's just men.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well,
But
Maybe it's just
but it did flip to women shouldn't wear men's clothing, which is women shouldn't wear pants. I mean that's the extrapolation.
Yes. Go ahead, Lenore.
yeah, may I ask you, I want to pet your dog, too bad it's virtual. Hi.
Say hi, Sadie. Oh, baby.
Hi.
Where's the baby?
Well, tell me what your dog's name is.
Sadie.
That's what I thought, but your daughters had it differently in one of your columns. They called them something else to her. You didn't touch on what I sort of spoke of before, what was happening in Israel and that people seem not to care what people wear when they go to temple. Is that still true?
Well, Dina, you've been there recently. What's your experience?
Well, Israel as a whole is a much more casual country.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're going to have the black hats, and they're always going to be, fully dressed. Although, yeah, they're always going to be fully dressed. I don't think I've ever seen a black hat in Israel without a coat, a
I
suit
get
jacket,
hot when I look.
minimum a suit jacket or a coat. It's just casual. And yet, having said that, when I go to shul Saturday morning in Israel, the majority of the women are in skirts. Nobody's in jeans. Nobody on the women's side is in jeans. I can't see the men's side.
Right, but so wait a second. So a couple things. First of all, it was your question, Lenore, that prompted me to ask how much of our custom today is just American tradition versus Jewish tradition, because like you said, Dina, in Israel is just a more laid back society. And so the way they dress in shul is in many ways just a reflection of how they are as a society. Now the reason that women,
they dress for business.
right. Now the reason that women in traditional shuls in Israel don't wear skirts has nothing to do with fanciness of dress. It has everything to do with sniut.
Youth?
Sniut, modesty.
Oh.
Right? In a traditional community, if women are wearing skirts, I don't think it's a matter of formality or fanciness. It's about sniut.
Right. But that's the
If you
traditional communities. What about when you get to like when I go and I daven, I usually daven at Shira Chadashah.
Well, that's Orthodox. That's an Orthodox shul.
Well, okay.
No, I know.
Yeah, okay.
I know it's a funky Orthodox shul, but if you go to the conservative shul, Moreshet Yisrael in Jerusalem, you'll see women wearing pants.
Okay.
Perhaps not as many. I'm not trying to argue with you here. Perhaps not as many. I think that also that skirts have for women, skirts have become sort of Shabbos dress. Again, not necessarily having anything to do with either tzniut or fanciness. I think it's just, when I walk around my community here in Montoya Circle, everyone's wearing skirts. Every woman is wearing a skirt.
Yeah, but again, think about who's in that.
They're Orthodox, right?
Yeah.
But many of those would wear pants during the week.
Oh, right. Well, I'm in pants now.
Yeah.
I come to evening minyan in pants. It's just Shabbos I don't. But what you said about America versus Israel is interesting because let's face it, American jewelry has a great German influence. I
Mm,
mean, I know it was started with the reforms, but the High Germans and they had
yeah,
strict dress codes,
you're right. That's
which,
interesting.
plus the fact that I'm here in Boston, which has a Puritan ethic.
Yeah.
So put those two together, and it's white gloves and stockings with seams
Well,
to go to
I'll
Jordan Marsh.
I'll add another piece to it. The other piece is how synagogues are really modeled after Protestant churches.
Right.
And Protestant churches, there's also a dress code. Or that, not anymore, but there
They
was.
used to be, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all churches used to be.
Right.
I
Right.
can remember my shock the first Easter Sunday. I was at my grandmother's and we were sitting on the porch and we were watching people walk to church, and my shock at the women who were in pants.
Mm,
Like, it's like high holidays,
yeah.
May I go back to what you were talking about a little while ago, Rabbi? That you walked into the temple and the rabbi was in jeans. I always had the feeling that it was really nice, especially if you were going into doing this is from a business angle almost. It's like in any big business, I guess. If new people come walking in to look at the temple and the rabbi happens to walk out, it's much more comfortable to see rabbi dressed with maybe a shirt, maybe not necessarily a tie, but greeting new people walking around in jeans. I don't think I would be as impressed with the temple as a whole if the rabbi came out and was looking sort of that casual.
And yet I think young people would find that rabbi more approachable.
That's what I was just going to say. I wonder if that's a generational
I agree with that.
It's generational, Lenore, and we just have to remember that we're old.
No, I agree with that. I often try to put myself in my kids' place and think down, or even my grandkids' place, which is getting a little hard now because I can't relate all that distance down when the 6-year-old is on the computer all the time. So
I'm teaching a group of millennials down here. I have about 8 to 15 millennials that every other week, and we learn about different topics. These are young professionals, engaged Jews, really amazing people. Young folks that would be. Oh, I froze. Can you all still hear me?
your voice is not matching you.
Yeah, and you're breaking up.
I think hold on, I'm coming back now, I think.
Your voice is first and then your mouth.
I'm gonna turn my, oh, hello.
Goodbye.
Just turned my camera off. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Hear you.
All right, I'm gonna keep my camera off for a while. There's something funky with my internet access. In any case, I was just saying that. So I'm teaching this group of millennials, and this is the group that would be fine with me wearing jeans, and yet I find myself wearing my slacks and button-down shirt for them. I'm not sure why, to be honest with you. I would love to go meet with them in jeans, but there's. And you all know me. I mean, you all know that I will be the first. I will never wear a tie again. I mean, I just, that ain't happening. That whole time, I'm done with the tie thing. And I think that for young people, it in many ways, it is about accessibility, like you said.
But yet they go into work and they have to have a certain dress code.
Well, increasingly not as much. Increasingly, dress codes in work are much looser, I think. Don't you think, Lenore?
To a degree, but not front office kind of people, I don't think.
Right, maybe.
And even women who are sitting in the front office, I don't think they would like to look sloppy.
No, but they don't wear skirts necessarily. I mean, they'll wear pantsuits, pantsuits.
Pants are a whole other thing.
Pantsuit nation,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
absolutely. I know people who belong.
So let's jump back into the text a little bit. So the one piece that there are pieces before it, but let me just
Okay, you get
about
yourself back on. It's awful looking at them down in the corner and you up in that little center thing.
well, I'll put it back on in a few minutes because I'm trying to get my bandwidth going again.
Okay.
So on verse 4, on the verse that we just read, verse 4, where it talks about a headdress. So Rashi says, wait, what does Rashi say? Hold on.
Headdress and a sash.
Rashi says, where the heck is his comment? Oh, here we go. So Rashi says it was kind of a domed cap. And Ramban Nachmanides responds to that, and he says that the headdress was like a domed cap is not correct. Our sages tell us that the headdress was 16 cubits long. That's 24 feet long, and was wound about his head again and again.
Right. My translation was a turban. My
Yeah.
translation was a turban.
In fact, wait a second, hold on. The word Rashi refers to in verse 40 is never applied to the headdress of the high priest, only to that of the ordinary priest. In fact, these too were wound, but set atop the head, with the folds piled up in such a way as to look like a helmet.
Oh my God.
As Onkelos suggests. In fact, migba'at, which is the word apparently here, I'm looking for the word, I don't see it. Migba'at. Okay. But in fact, migba'at headdress and koba helmet are etymologically related. K is often replaced by a G. Huh. Wow. Okay. Let's see, what else is there? So that was just the hat.
Okay, so I know I'm reading from an Orthodox Chumash, but the part I didn't get to that again emphasizes being appropriately dressed, that the Kohanim could perform the service only in garments bespeaking the sacred nature of what they were doing, suggests also that the Jew who prays or involves his own service of God, our own service, should take care to dress and conduct himself with dignity and respect for the one before whom he stands.
So here's my problem with that.
So, but I understand that that's from the Orthodox.
No, I don't have an issue with the Orthodox saying you should get dressed up, but to say get dressed up to show proper respect before whom you stand, that's what I have a problem with, because what that says, what that teaches is that
To get dressed,
Hey.
I didn't hear you because of the.
Sadie, shush. Because what that's to say, do this because to know before whom you stand. What that teaches is that you're only standing before God on Shabbos in Shul.
Should take care to dress and conduct himself with dignity and respect. So
No.
it's the conduct.
No, but before that or after that,
But,
talked
but
about.
they're not talking about Shabbat. Remember now, the Orthodox are praying 3 times a day. So it's daily dress for them.
Right. But even the Orthodox don't wear suits to minyan. I mean,
Yeah, but we're not saying suits. Well, the ultra Orthodox do.
no. But what we're talking about people who, if we had our druthers, people who came to shul, women would be wearing skirts or dresses, and men would be wearing suits. No.
When did we had our druthers?
You've spoiled me, and now I'm going to say jackets and button-down shirts.
No, I haven't spoiled you. I've ruined you, is what I've done.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. Now, I will tell you something interesting is that, you all know I'm not a dress up kind of guy, but I will tell you that when I grew up in the Orthodox community that I was in St. Louis, you would, of course, wear a jacket to shul, forget the tie, but you'd always wear a jacket to shul, and then you'd take it off for lunch, And then when it was time to bench, or even if I was at someone's house, you take your jacket off for lunch. When it was time to bench to say Birkat Hamazon, you always put your jacket back on before you say Birkat Hamazon. And to this day, if I am wearing a jacket, if I have a jacket with me, I go to put it back on when it's time to say Birkat.
Well, even think about Friday night services. I mean, I don't understand the whole, I still don't understand the whole business with a talit on Friday night services. When I first started going to evening minyan, when I was saying Kaddish for my father, it was the person who davened always wore, they didn't wear a tallis, they always wore a jacket.
Right.
There was always a jacket on when they davened. I still to this day don't quite understand it, but it's all part of this dress code.
Yes. No, I agree. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yes.
Listen, I just like to throw in here, I'm sorry, there are many people who don't understand, especially down here in Florida. I don't know, because there are so many Reform shuls, but the fact that their important shul for the most part is on Friday night, and they don't, you know, the whole big service is Friday night rather than Saturday.
Well, that's a Reform thing. That's in the Reform movement. They've emphasized Friday nights over Saturdays.
Right. And so when we have Friday night service, it's always a smaller service. People often don't understand that they're switching shuls or going from one to another. They don't understand why it's so much more elaborate on Friday night than on Saturday. And the dress sort of follows that as well.
Agreed.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead. Did someone just say something?
No,
So I wanted to comment, Dina, on your comment about talitot, wearing talit on Friday night. I never did that, or maybe I rarely did that. I shouldn't say I never did that. I think I rarely did that at Beth Abraham, and I did it reluctantly at Beth David, and now I do it again less reluctantly. For me personally, talit is a very important symbol to me, and I never wanted to bastardize this symbol. That is to say, you wear talit during the day, period, when you daven, right? And so I wanted to really try and be true to that. And the arguments that you should wear it on Friday night, lichvod Shabbat, to honor Shabbat, they just never rang true for me. Lots of people do it, but I never did. And
I was going to say, wait a minute, you don't use but.
No, I have a but. But first and I always struggled when I would see rabbis either performing a wedding or, offering a blessing at a convocation or whatever, wearing a talit. It always really bothered me because I felt like they were wearing it as a costume. Well, but so I was protesting on Sunday, and actually, wait, let me back up. Last Shabbos, there was a protest that I went to. It was Shabbos morning. And I made a big deal about the fact that I was going to be, where's my sign? I was going to be praying with my legs, right? I made a big deal on the fact that I was intentionally not going to shul, but I was still going to be praying with my legs. And I got there early enough so that I could do some real davening, some vocal davening also. So I brought my tallis with me. So I had my tallis on during this protest because I had just been davening and I just never took it off. Then this past Sunday, I went to another protest and I consciously chose to wear my tallis. Now, this was in the evening and it was a Sunday and I wasn't davening. There was absolutely no reason for me to wear my tallis. But I decided that I was participating in a sacred act and I wanted to mark that by wearing a talit. And in fact, tomorrow afternoon, I'm picking up a new talit that I'm making for myself. It's a peace rainbow colored tallis thing. And that's going to be my activist tallis. That's going to be the tallis that I wear when I'm not davening, right? When I'm out there doing activism. So I have sort of morphed from only wear a tallis at the absolute appropriate moments to maybe there is something powerful about this dress symbol that I could embrace at other times.
Interestingly, at my conservative shul when I was growing up in all those years, for the women, you rarely saw women wearing talit. It wasn't discussed that much, and that was the boys' thing, the guy thing.
It's beged ish. It's a man's clothing. That's one of the arguments against wearing a talit for women, is that it's beged ish. That's like you said, that's a boy's thing. It's a man's thing.
And however, now a lot of people, I never owned one of them. Now that the girls get talit when they're 13 or 12, it's much more popular to have one.
Right.
And even women wear them.
And the problem for young girls is that we don't have enough dinas in the world. And that is to say, we don't have enough women role models who do wear talit and for whom it is a very precious symbol and a very precious part of their davening experience. We don't have enough female role models for our young girls to look up to want to, or to be able to accept the expectation that they should also wear talit. My daughters don't wear talit because their mom doesn't. You know, I begged them to, but their mom doesn't. And they haven't had many other women in their lives who have worn talit. And so they don't.
And it wasn't even important to wear something on your head at all. I only did that since I'm down in Florida. My much more observant shuls up north, they didn't care if you women wore head
Tina,
covers.
did you wear a head covering before your kippah? Or has it always just been a kippah for you?
No, when I was growing up, we had these things called whimsies. They were netting that had decoration on them. They might have rhinestones or feathers or whatever. So it wasn't quite a hat, but it was very definitely a head covering. And you know, but that was what I wore. I wore that on the high holidays. I wore it. I think I wore it on Shabbos, but if I didn't have one, like when I was in USY, I didn't wear those. I had a kippah, half a kippah with bobby pins.
A half a kippah. Yeah, you folded
But,
the kippah over, right? Yeah.
But I always had my head covered when I was pregnant.
Rabbi David, what's your perception when a woman's up on the bima and I'm actually thinking of your daughter. She was up on the bima at one point and she carried a Torah for a few seconds and she did not have a head covering on. And I wondered maybe was it because she wasn't a bat mitzvah quite?
No, I don't see any connection between wearing a head covering and carrying the Torah.
And being on the bima and with the ark open?
The bima, it's just a piece of wood. It's a stage. It's
actually the ark being opened and closed. Actually, I always wore it because we were actually told, you should cover your head if the ark's going to be open or if you go on the bima.
I've never appreciated any connection between covering your head and being on the bima. Dina and I had this fight every Simchas Torah because on Simchat Torah, we'd hand the Torahs around, and Dina grew up with everyone who's carrying the Torah should have a talis. And again, I don't see any connection. I mean, I carry the Torah all the time. I move it from the sanctuary to my car to the wherever. I don't throw a talis on just to carry the Torah. Those are traditions. The fact you should cover your head, the fact you should wear a talis. Those are customs that we've come up with, but they've never rung true for me.
That's interesting.
I'm just a rebel, though. I'm just a rabble-rouser rebel.
Mm-hmm.
A rebel rabbi. Aye.
I've got agreement from the next room.
Oh, was that Melissa? Nice.
Yeah.
You
Nice.
do have a cause, Rabbi David.
Yeah, it's annoying Dina. That's my cause.
Yeah, and you do it so well.
I know I do. All right, we're going to start next week exactly where we started today because there's more commentary in this that we have to. No, that was a wonderful discussion. That was really, that was very rich for me. So thank you for that.
Well, it's interesting to me because I thought the things I grew up with were what is.
Right. Isn't that always the case? We find out that what we grew up with is not what everyone grew up with.
I want to add one quick thing, and it's whether you're a rabbi and how you dress, etc. It also turns to speech because I've been in both. Well, usually it's not. It can be conservative, mostly reform, where the rabbis really they're not happy about your calling them by rabbi, as a matter of fact, just their name, and I just that never sat well with me.
Well, next week we can tell you about the debates that we had at forget Beth David, the debates that we had at Beth Abraham about my about what to call me, because we went through when I actually became a rabbi, and we were at a board meeting debating what we should call me. It was a great debate
Oh, that I never.
because I wanted to just be David, I think. So
Yeah.
Well, that's all right. There's some very, very fancy rabbis who like to be called by their first name.
well, I am most definitely not fancy, but all right, everyone,
All right.
have the most wonderful week.
Thank you. You
Take
too.
care.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Lenore.